Welcome to The Truth in His Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today I have the privilege of having a conversation with the CEO of the Venetoulis Institute for Local Journalism, the parent company of the local news startup, the Baltimore Banner. Please welcome Imtiaz Patel. Welcome to the podcast.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you on. I feel like I'm putting out evergreen and timely content. So I want to start off with kind of that introductory question, because I always go really top level, usually a cut and paste, usually something I've copied offline. But I like to allow the guests to really introduce themselves and really, for instance, someone may ask me, what do you do? I may call myself something other than a podcaster. So I like to allow the guests to really describe what they do. And with that, how did you get to Baltimore ultimately? What was that career path and how did you get to Baltimore? So, who are you and how did you ultimately get to Baltimore?
Yeah, it's a long and windy road. And if you would have asked me 18 months ago, will you be in Baltimore? I'd be like, what are you talking about? I live in New Jersey. I have a family. I have a home in New Jersey. I'm good. But it's been interesting. So, the way I would kind of think of myself really at the end of the day is a guy who's really passionate about news and what the impact news can have, and really the business of news at the end of the day. How do you make the business side work? Because I've always been the business side guy and trying to figure out, okay, the market is changing, and that's been kind of the sum total of my career in news. The market's changing, and how do you address that? And I'm the guy who, from a strategy perspective, has to think about, okay, what do we do? How do we make it work so that we can have great journalism and fund it? So that's me, and that's probably how I'd like to be remembered. In terms of my journey, I think of my career really as three pieces of this. I'm a little bit of a nomad in that my father was a serial entrepreneur, and we moved all the time. When he'd start a business, it'd be great for a few years, then it would fail, and he'd say, okay, kids, we're packing up and we're moving somewhere else. So I was born in London. From London, I went to India when I was 8. And then 6 years later, moved back to a different part of England. And then I kind of continued that trend myself in that went back to London, then went to Canada for a year, and then moved to the States to go to business school and never left. I just fell in love with the States. And I've been in kind of the Northeast, like New York. I went to school in New York and just stayed in that area until I moved here. And really, my career has three parts. So one is financial. Right out of school, I worked in banking, and I think the three components of my career really bring it all together. So one was financial, and that's given me a deep appreciation of what do the numbers mean and how do you tell a story through numbers and really understand what's going on underneath a business truly from the numbers. That was one part. Then I moved into consulting, and really a lot of my consulting career was with consumer companies, retailers, and really thinking about two types of businesses. Either someone looking at a growth idea and thinking about how do I grow this business or come up with a new concept, or secondly, a business that's struggling, how do you turn it around? And that retail experience was really great because there's so many parallels about what's happening in retail and what's happening in news. Retailers have just been much quicker about dealing with it and addressing it than local news organizations. So there's a lot of kind of overlap there. And then third is I went to the Wall Street Journal, which is when I first worked in news, and I fell in love with the news industry at that point. And my role there was, okay, everything's going digital. How do you deal with this? So it was like coming up with the plan, the strategy, and operationalizing it. So all of that comes together to this. But then why specifically Baltimore? There's a couple of reasons there. One is I was doing a lot of work the last few years in local news. I did work on a digital transformation project with the Philadelphia Inquirer, spent close to a year with them. Then I was working with Gannett, which is the largest owner of local news operations in the country. They have 240-ish local news publications, and thinking about their business model. And I met Stuart when he was thinking about, well, what do we do in Baltimore? How can we make sure we have a robust news organization? And the work I was doing showed me that there's a couple of things going on. There's a real gap in what local news organizations are offering, and because of that, they will not succeed.
Right.
There are a significant number of things we can do to turn around the business. And so I had a bunch of ideas. Stuart, really, those ideas resonated with him. He wanted to fund it, and I really believed in how sincere he was about doing this for the right reasons, right? It's not about his ego, not about like, oh, here's something, I'm going to be the white knight kind of thing. He really believes in how important this is. Yeah. And I'd told myself many years ago, I am never going to work with anyone I don't trust or respect. And he checked both those things for me. And I'm like, this is such a great opportunity also to build an organization that has a great culture and really treats its people well, helps the people grow, and so that enables them to do the best work. And that's, I had that opportunity. Stuart gave me that opportunity, which is how I ended up here.
Thank you. Thank you for walking us through that. And definitely a few gems that are there. The ones that stuck out is like, I got to trust and respect people that I work with. And really, what is that root? Because I think a lot of times we get caught in this idea of let's chase the dollar, let's chase the prestige, the clout, and so on. But really, it may conflict with what your values are, and ultimately, it doesn't make you happy. And I think journalism and how we do things have changed a lot. So, which brings me kind of to this next question. I think the mode of how news is consumed has changed over the years, with more focus geared towards speed and versus getting the story right. And I just recall, like, just when someone had to make a retraction, it was a thing. It was a huge thing. Now people are just freewheeling, we're getting it out there. And from your vantage point, do you see that shift, or am I just off base in that kind of like assessment that is more focused on getting it out there first versus getting it right?
Yeah, I think that's I think that is correct, partially correct.
Sure.
Right. I think right now everyone wants to be the one breaking the story and getting all the clicks and all that kind of stuff. So yes, there is a level of speed is critical. We got to break the story first. But also what's happened is that as a lot of organizations have struggled, local news organizations, they initially started cutting, investments they made, which is why they've been slow to adopt other forms of narrative, and they've stuck to paper for so long. They've also cut in the newsroom, and the first positions to go are the editors. So there's no one there editing and questioning, or not enough people doing it. So things slip through the cracks. But the third thing is a lot of the news organizations are still paper bound, right? So they have a news hole that they need to fill, and therefore they need stories to fill it. Yeah. And do you take shortcuts? Potentially. Should you? No. And that's what's happening. So there is a lot of that, and we have an advantage here, right?
Yeah.
We don't have paper. We will never have paper, right? And so I don't have to fill a number of pages. And we can really think about, does this story add anything to the narrative? Is this really telling our readers, the community at large, something new or something different, or adding? If all we're doing is rehashing someone else's story, are we really adding value? That's not what we're here for, right? And if we have two stories because there was nothing else, so be it in a day.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be that, but if we did, it is what it is, right? Until the story is right, and until we know we're adding. I'll give you an example. A couple of our reporters, a couple of months ago, were doing a story on Mosby, and they wrote a version. They didn't like the version themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think they did 4 iterations of the story and realized that we have nothing new to add to the story. They themselves killed the story. Nobody did that for them. They did it. And that's how I want all of our reporters to be thinking.
Yeah, that's great. And even from my perspective in doing this kind of arts and culture documentation, chronicler, when I see that there's so many different podcasts out there, so much different content out there, and you're looking for real estate, you're looking for folks, it's time to even engage in what you're doing. So if I'm interviewing someone, or if I'm even looking at who should I talk to, it's like, am I adding any value? Am I doing anything different? What makes this worthwhile? What makes this worth my time? And even looking at it as, kind of like the self-editing thing of like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. Or I think I'm going to move that to this date. And maybe this guest will have something new that's worthwhile. And, as you touched on, which I really liked, of it's likely not going to be 2 stories, but if it was, it's like, so be it. That's just what it is. So as we've been kind of like circling around a little bit, really, from a high level point of view, or even if it's the copy and paste, give us the mission. What's the mission of the Banner? And from your vantage point, what does success look like in the next 5 years? Because we have to map these and forecast these things out, right?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of words in the mission, right? And we actually spent a lot of time thinking about the mission literally on day one. So last July, there were only 3 of us, myself, Klaus, our chief marketing officer, and Katie, social media person. And 3 of us sat down and we wrote our mission, and then Stuart jumped in and he helped us kind of refine it. And really at the end of the day, there's 2 components to it. One is very community specific. It's really about strengthening, uniting, and lifting kind of Baltimore. And that means all the communities of Baltimore at the end of the day. Means, in a nutshell, the way we talk about it is, how can we make Baltimore a better place to live? So that's one part of it. And I stress this, it's all communities. I don't care whether it's a subscriber or a non-subscriber. It doesn't matter if they're paying for our service or even reading it. Yeah. We are here for all communities. The second piece is kind of a broader mission, right? There's a lot of experimentation going on around the country with different models of news. We're probably the largest one doing this, and no one's doing it at the size we're doing it. Yeah. But we are, in a way, an experiment. We are really trying to figure out and recreate and come up with a new way to create a sustainable news operation at scale. Right. And that's the second part of our mission, which is to create a sustainable model that maybe other communities around the country can also emulate. And that way we can help kind of the national narrative on news and how the ecosystem for local news can improve.
Yeah, and I think there in Baltimore specifically, there's this competition. Obviously, you have the Sun around. Obviously, you have the new, I guess the reemergence of the Baltimore beat, and it's competitive in that kind of front. And you see these different like overlaps and so on. And the Banner's getting that Yankees, your New York connection, that Killers Row coming together. So really talk about how the Banner will fit into that landscape of being here. We're a town that has a paper that's been around for forever, but how does something with the model that's there, as you touched on it being more of an experiment, and we're shifting into maybe this new way of considering and consuming and getting our news. So talk about that a bit, and how does it fit into the local setup here?
Yeah, absolutely. But I believe I didn't completely answer your previous question. So let me hit that one up. So what does success look like in 5 years? I think there's 2 pieces to this. One is the financial, right? Yes. I want us to be self-supported. basically, we're making enough money to cover a large newsroom at scale of potentially 100 or more people. So that's one piece of it. The second, and there's three components. The second is like we are actually having a measurable impact in the community. If all we're doing is reporting and telling stories and making money, but having zero impact, have made zero difference, we have completely failed. Mm-hmm. That is not consistent with our mission. So we got to have an impact. And we're actually working right now to figure out how do we measure impact and how do we report on the impact that we're going to have. The third piece related to that is really around community. If in 5 years, people in the community say, oh, that thing, the banner, they're kind of like this thing on the side that's just kind of reporting on what happens. I want them to say that the banner is a part of our community. Yeah. The banner always sticks up for our community. We may not agree with the banner, but we know they come at it from the perspective of supporting the community and all communities. That is success to me.
Great.
Yeah. So on your other question, it almost feels like Baltimore's having a moment right now, right? You've got sun, and thank God what they're doing is they are essentially replacing all the people that we've hired away from there, right? So they're trying to stay strong, which typically doesn't happen from an Alden-owned publication. Yeah. Maybe we had a little bit of, impact on that. So competition is good because it's good for the community, the readers, right? You got the beat coming up. You've already got like Fishbowl and the Brew and Maryland Matters as well at a state level. You've got Axios coming into the market as well. So this is almost like, I don't know, journalism heaven in a way, with all this investment going in. And I think what we have to continue focusing on is why are we different? How are we serving our mission? And not focus so much on what others are doing. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things I want to do, and we've started this outreach with other publications around the state, is how can we be a ecosystem that helps each other? Like, can I share some content from the banner with some of these other publications and vice versa, right? So that we're helping each other. And then you as a reader don't necessarily have to subscribe to everything, right? But you can get all the key content you want in one place. And that way we're also helping each other. So we're still thinking through that. It's in really early formative stages. And that's how I think at the end of the day, again, it's not whether I am number one or the banner is the most successful. It is like, are we really serving the mission? Mm-hmm. That's the bottom line.
It's big to hear that impact is a huge part of it. And, as I'm doing more things and having more conversations about like impact, and, some people feel like it's a buzzword, but when people really determine and speak on how their impact is part of that North Star, that being community focused, being community driven, and putting their money where their mouth is at, and having the newsroom that's in downtown Baltimore and things of that nature really show like there's an investment in the community and being a part of it, not, speaking for the community and not necessarily being in it.
Yeah, that's why I'm really excited about some of the people we've hired. Well, I'm excited about all of them, but I'm really excited about our Creatives in Residence program, right? It's a way for us to really get voices from different people in the community. Yeah. And like they're not traditional journalists. So it's like different voices, different thoughts. And this is gonna be a program where people come, some people will leave, new people will come. So we're going to constantly, and we're thinking about other ways to create that platform for other voices as well. It's so critical. It means I always say, journalism is not the end in itself. It's a means to an end, mm-hmm. right? Through accountability journalism and the work we do, our job is to have an impact and make things better. That's it, right? It's once we start thinking it's all about just the journalism, I think we've lost the plot.
And I think like just having folks that are coming in who don't have that traditional journalism path, I think what you're touching on is very accurate there. That especially here in Baltimore, we're very DIY. We'll figure it out, but sometimes those borders and those boundaries are there that are really just roadblocks, and they kind of getting in the way. But having opportunities to have their voice heard, because one of the things that's baked into this podcast is people don't feel like their voices are being heard and authentic storytelling is there. So having people who are from the city who may not fit that traditional, newsman, here's my fedora with the, the pencil in it kind of thing. It's just great to see like people, and it's like, oh, they're able to share this. It's accessible. That's the thing that really sticks out for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So now I got a few more questions before I get to those rapid fire ones that everyone just loves. People do cartwheels, backflips, the whole thing.
Yeah, I won't be doing cartwheels.
So, could you share, and I know you've kind of touched on this, but I like to ask it this way. Could you share what really motivates you and like all of the things that you're doing? And is it dreams? Is it spite? Or is it something that's more altruistic?
I think there's a couple of things, right? One is kind of external, one is a little bit internal, right? The external thing is really, I really think at the end of the day, this mission is so critical. Local news is so critical. Some of the challenges we've seen as a country with disinformation and things like that and polarization, I do believe a large part of it is because we don't have a strong enough local news operation everywhere. I mean, and the reality is local news organizations, unfortunately, they first got hit by losing their classified income through Craigslist, right? Then they lost all the ad dollars digitally online through Google and Facebook. People started migrating away from print to digital, but they weren't great about making the investments and going digital. And they had all these investments in print, so they kind of, the fallacy of sunk costs, right? They wanted to keeping that print operation going. So, which resulted in they're cutting cost through cutting people in the newsroom and across the organizations and putting out a worse product, and filling that news hole with national and international news from a wire service. So they're not really serving the needs of the community, right? So as a result, this whole issue of democracy at risk essentially comes up, right? So that is really important that we turn the tide, at least here in Baltimore, and try to do that and really help create the strong ecosystem of local news. So from a mission perspective, very, very important to me. We have a town hall every month here. It's the last Wednesday of every month. We start with our mission every single time because I want everyone to like live it, feel it, breathe it. Yep. It should consume everything they think about. So that's the kind of external. The internal thing is I'm a super competitive person. I'm super driven. And really, when I set my mind on wanting to do something, and I tend to like picking things that are not so easy, I want to succeed. Yeah. And success and ambition is that other part of me that drives me. Now, when you can bring the two things together, the mission and my personal drive and what drives me, I think we got a good thing here.
It's manna from heaven right there. Yeah.
Exactly. And then that's the thing, right? That's why I like wake up every morning and I just love what I do. It's really hard, right? It's really freaking hard. Like if I had hair, I would have lost it by now.
Look at you talking to.
Exactly, right? But I get up every morning and I can't wait to get here. And I'm just excited about what we're doing and how we're doing it and building this thing and hopefully making a difference.
Love to hear it. So I got three more. That's one I always take some interest in here. Is like when you first shared it. So like, and maybe outside of the internal like meetings that were there discussing like mission and kind of the more foundational nascent stage sort of things when it came to the banner, when you like got the go, like we know that we're doing this, we know that we're making it happen. When did you first share like that idea of like how you saw things coming together, and how did that conversation go? Who did you tell? Did they look at you like, oh no, or how did that first conversation outwardly go when you spoke about the ideas for the banner?
Yeah, so we started working on the banner was really a plan B initially. Because we really thought the acquisition of the Sun was going to go through. It means excruciatingly close. Means I'd already started working on what would I do first 90 days when we took over the Sun. And we were going to have to do some things that were hard, but we were going to make a significant investment.
Sure.
And then when it started looking like, well, maybe it won't happen, I started work. Stuart asked me to start building a plan for a startup because the mission is still so critical. It wasn't about the Sun, it was about the mission. Mm-hmm. So I started working on that. And initially I shared it with, Stuart, obviously, and some of his close advisors, but also Ted Venetoulis, who we're named after. And Ted's been like, this has been his passion project for a really, really long time. And he was so enthusiastic about this and wanting to do it. Ted, Stuart, and I then went on a road show around the city, meeting with different people, like, current political leaders, former political leaders, people with influence, people who have worked in newsrooms, people who used to work at the Sun, just everyone we could talk to, and then also people around the country talking about a plan. So one of the things we did is we also spoke with all the other new startups around the country. So Daily Memphian in Memphis, Lookout Santa Cruz, Block Club Chicago, The City in New York, Colorado Sun, ProPublica. And we actually ended up on a little road trip going to meet a number of people as well. So we talked a lot, said, here's what we're thinking. What do you think's right? What do you think's wrong about this? Do you think we're crazy? And Mike Bloomberg wanted to meet with us here in Baltimore. Yeah. And he's like, you should do this. He's like, you probably have, 40% chance of success, but think about the impact you will have if you actually succeed. Right. So he's like, do it.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. And yeah, I think sometimes you have to take that leap, and just like 40% depends on where you're looking at it. Like in baseball, that's a number that no one ever hits 40% of the time. In basketball, you don't want to be 40% from the free throw line. You don't want to have that.
So just building on that, I get this question from pretty much everyone I interview, and I interview every single person who joins the banner. Because I think it's so important that we have great talent and people who really believe in the mission. That's why I take the time to meet as many people as I can. Well, everyone. And they all ask me, well, what's the likelihood of success? And I always say, well, let's think of it this. And they frame it more like, are we going to be around in 3 years or 5 years? Mm-hmm. And I say, look, the probability of us being around is close to 100% in 3 years, right? I know how much funding I've got. I know exactly what we're going to do for the next 2 to 3 years. After 3 years, things change, right? And maybe some of our ideas won't work. Maybe others will. We'll have to come up with other ideas because some of our hypotheses were wrong. Yeah. So I say, year 4, year 5, I think it's closer to 80% survival rate. But I think if we get through year 5 and 6, I think we're going to be around. I want us, and we're building this foundation so that this thing's around forever.
Yeah. And there's so many different things, and you can have unknowns in all of these different things that are there. But having a methodology of how you want to go about things, forecasting a strategy, which is obviously big for you, it's there, and being able to be honest with people as they come in. Like those interviews are always weirdly one-sided, but when you're like, look, these are the numbers. This is what I forecasted. This is what I'm seeing happening. That's the truth that you want. That's the type of background that you want. So this is actually the last real question, because I think I got an answer already for the other one. So tell me about Baltimore. That's the thing. I always like to hear that from someone who has been has lived in multiple places internationally, and has come here and is covering like news and putting news out there. So tell me about Baltimore, and isn't there an experience that you would say that really sums up this place that you've had?
So I will say Baltimore is not what people think it is. And here's what I mean by that. So I didn't know Baltimore well. I came here, I don't know, 10 years ago when I was at the Wall Street Journal, maybe 12 years ago now. We had a sales meeting in Baltimore. The guy who ran the sales team actually is from Baltimore. So he did a sales meeting in Baltimore, and I came to the Inner Harbor. I'm like, oh, this is nice. And I've never expected this. But my perception of Baltimore is, I didn't know what to think of Baltimore before I came here. It wasn't kind of on my list of places to come. And when I got here and I started like spending time, my first experience, and I know this is not Baltimore, right? It's a piece of Baltimore. Yeah. There's the Inner Harbor, Harbor East, Fells Point, Canton, places like that. I'm like, wow, this is actually really nice. It's so vibrant. It's not what I thought it was at all. And I'm like, wow, there's got to be a narrative here that people don't know. I think Baltimore has bad PR. What we need to do is help change the narrative of Baltimore and show people how great the city is. And there's so many different neighborhoods and so many different things going on in different neighborhoods. So like, look at Mount Vernon, you go to Hamden, there's all this stuff going on. I'm like a foodie and self-confessed foodie, and I eat way too much. And I love going to the different restaurants. That's my way of experiencing neighborhoods. Yeah. But I then had Justin Fenton take me on a trip to West Baltimore. Yeah. And show me kind of that perspective. And he said, I've never heard you so quiet ever. It's frankly shocking. And it shows how hard this is going to be to have an impact. But it's so important that we do have a positive impact. So it brought it all to life. So it's like there's two Baltimores, essentially. Yeah. Everyone's perception is one Baltimore, but we need to, how do we unite the two Baltimores, and how do we change the PR of Baltimore and show it for all the good stuff it has as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think at different endpoints where our goals are very similar. So that's that, I think, for the real questions. But now, since we've been talking, I've added a few more to these rapid fire questions, but I got some for you. So okay, I hope you're ready. And the way that these go, whatever pops in your head, like first thing, don't overthink it. Don't be over competitive about it. It's like, no, I'm going to get this right. All right.
Okay.
What is your favorite drink?
It is tequila.
Nice. Do you have any superstitions or art rituals related to your work? If so, what's one?
No superstitions whatsoever.
Okay.
I do have one when it comes to sport, but
I would love to know that.
So I am everyone here knows I'm a huge fan of Liverpool Football Club in the English Premier League.
Yeah.
I have been since I was a teenager. And a few years ago, my wife bought me a Liverpool flag, and I put it outside my house, and it's there. And in the winds, it's completely tattered. But the season they're having this year, I refuse to take it down. I'm like, the season ends in 2 weeks. It'll come down then, and we will get a new flag. I'm not touching it.
I had one that was ridiculous. I have like a bunch of like Orioles and Ravens like hats and things of that nature. And I think the last Super Bowl they won back in 2012. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. It was like the blackout and all of the stuff during halftime. I grabbed every hat that I owned. I'm talking about knit caps, fitted caps, the whole thing. I wore all of them for the second half. I was like, we need to come back, guys. We need to not lose this game. I was like, I refuse. And there's a picture of me that I'm wearing probably 8 hats. It's ridiculous. And that was me being at my most superstitious.
Yeah, I know. It's when it comes to sports, we all get a little crazy.
Yes, fanatic. That's the word, right? Yeah. You've lived multiple places. Favorite travel destination?
I would say Asia.
Okay.
And generally Asia. I just like the culture and all the different experiences.
Dope. If you could be any animal, and this is, I know it's weird, what would it be?
If I could be any animal, a horse.
Okay. Okay, that's a certain class level there. What have you? Like a lot of prancing around, a lot of hopping. I like it.
Yeah, there's such elegant, beautiful beasts. It would have been funny if I was going to answer and say not a cat.
Cats and dicks. Okay, the last two. If your life was a story, what would it be titled?
What would it be titled?
That might be the one that stumps you.
Yeah, it might be. It might be the crazy Indian who tried to create a new model for news.
It's a long title.
It is a long title. That's why I'm not the writer. I'm the business guy.
That's a great title. I like it. The last one I have for you, journalism, and being around words all the time. What is a word that you absolutely hate that you're like, can we not have that in this? Can we get that out of there? Can we come up with a synonym, please?
I'll answer it a little differently.
Okay.
If anyone calls us a newspaper, I snap right back and correct them. Because that is a very channel specific description. And I don't want us to be channel specific. We're a news content organization.
I like it. Yeah. Get that clear as branding, folks.
That's a little bit of a boring answer, but someone just called us a newspaper about an hour ago, so it's like top of mind.
No, it has to be right or what have you. Like because sometimes people use terms that are deprecated, and I think the term newspaper is becoming something that's more and more deprecated every day.
Yeah.
So that's all of the questions that I have. But one, I want to thank you for coming on to this podcast and being a part of it. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to tell the fine folks, just plug. It's time to plug away, share anything that you felt like we didn't really cover, and the social media, all of that good stuff, website, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So we haven't launched officially yet. We're very close to launching. And our billboards are going up very soon, or by the time this goes out, they may be up. So you'll be seeing us around town. But we do have a newsletter where we're publishing stories. There's some really powerful stories that we're putting out there. Sign up for our newsletter. Just go to the baltimorebanner.com. It's a free newsletter. And the more people we can have and hear from, I think the better our stories will get.
It's great to hear. Well, there you have it. For the CEO of the Venetoulis Institute for Local Journalism, parent company of the local news starter, the Baltimore Banner, Imtiaz Patel, I'm Rob Lee, saying that there is community, art, journalism, writing, reporting in and around Baltimore. You've just got to look for it.